There's an old nursery rhyme that goes, "What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. What are little boys made of? Snips and snails and puppy dogs' tails. That's what little boys are made of." Not sure those ingredients are FDA approved. That's Today, we're hopefully another recipe, hopefully that is not FDA approved. We're going to find out what fools are made of. Okay, we're going to be looking in Proverbs. We're going to see what fools are made of. We'll see a list of the main ingredients for foolishness. And so what does it take to make a person a fool? We've seen over the last 2 weeks that they are unteachable, the fool. They are unteachable. They are unable to accept correction. Their pride blinds them to being able to learn wisdom and understanding. It's the main issue of the fool. And we read in Proverbs chapter 26, verse 12, it says, "Do you see a person who's wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than for him." The worst of foolishness, the thing that can make a person worse than a fool, perhaps the thing that makes them most like the devil, is when they are proud to the point that it causes themselves to see themselves as wise. They are wise in their own eyes. William Shakespeare wrote in his play, As You Like It, he wrote, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool." This fits with what we've previously seen. The fool's pride doesn't allow themselves to learn. They think they already know it all. They think they are wise, and so they cannot learn more wisdom. In his book, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis wrote this. He said, "Pride is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense." And so the first and foremost important ingredient to making a fool really seems to be, from the book of Proverbs, we would see it seems to be their pride. Proverbs spends a lot of time warning about pride, because that is what imprisons the fool in their foolishness. They're too proud to accept that they're wrong. If they could humble themselves long enough to see the error of their ways, then they might be saved from their foolishness. It's the pride that enslaves them. Perhaps this is why Proverbs chapter 24, verse 7, we read, "Wisdom is inaccessible to a fool. He does not open his mouth at the city gate." Now, we've seen in previous passages that wisdom's available to everyone. Wisdom is calling out, wanting us to come and receive the gift that she has. But the fool cannot access that wisdom because their pride keeps them from accepting it. It blinds them to it. They won't humble themselves to receive it, and therefore it becomes inaccessible to them. This may also be in part why we see the unchangingness of the fool. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 11, we read, "As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness." Proverbs 13:15, "Good sense wins favor, but the way of the treacherous never changes." See, they just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Why do they do that? Because their pride doesn't allow them to consider that they might be wrong. Their pride traps them. They see themselves as wise, and as such, they completely trust their own judgment, no matter what anyone says. The world sort of recognizes this problem. In fact, the world will tell you this. Maybe you've heard this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. You heard that before? Okay. Well, God's word doesn't call that insanity. In the Bible, that's called being a fool. The fool returns to his own vomit like a dog. This is a significant difference because we tend to think of people as not being responsible if they're insane. Okay, insanity takes away some of the guilt, but they are responsible for being foolish. And that being the case, it's important for us to recognize the difference between insanity and foolishness. There is a difference. God holds you responsible for repeating your foolishness over and over again because you're too proud to admit you did wrong. God will hold you responsible for that. because it doesn't stem from an illness. It stems from the sin of pride. The world will try and excuse their bad behavior as a part of an illness. Well, they're just insane. Then once you have that, you believing that, you'll believe it's not their fault. They will want you to accept it. Once you believe it's not their fault, they'll want you to accept it as normal. That's the way sin plays out in the world. First, it's just an illness, it's just an insanity, and then it's normal behavior. We must be careful to see these issues as God sees them and not allow ourselves to be blinded by the world's mischaracterizations. Okay, they will try and lead you astray, but God's word says it's foolishness, and it comes from pride. We must also be careful when talking to the fool, because their pride will make them unable to benefit from anything you tell them. We've kind of already seen this, but look at Proverbs 23:9. It says, "Don't speak to a fool, for he will despise the insight of your words." Proverbs 26:4. "Don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, or you'll be like him yourself." If you try to talk to a fool about their foolishness, they won't listen because they're a fool. At the very best, they'll despise you for trying to help them. At the very worst, you'll wind up lowering yourself to their level. You must beware of this. The more you say, the more the fool is convinced of their own wisdom. Their pride doesn't allow them to consider other options. So talking to them won't do any good, but it might do you harm. Now, we have seen the first primary ingredient of foolishness is basically pride. But the second ingredient that's focused on the Proverbs is a lack of self-control. A lack of self-control. The more foolish a person is, the less they can control themselves. The fool cannot control their thoughts, their temper, their mouth, or at times even their actions. Let's look at some Proverbs on that. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 16. "A fool's displeasure is known at once, but whoever ignores an insult is sensible." Proverbs 11:12. "Whoever sows contempt for his neighbor lacks sense, but a person of understanding keeps silent." Proverbs 12:23. "A shrewd person conceals knowledge, but a foolish heart publicizes stupidity." Proverbs 13:16. "Every sensible person acts knowledgeably, but a fool displays his stupidity." Proverbs 29:11. "A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise person holds it in check." Proverbs 17:27. "The one who has knowledge restrains his words, and one who keeps a cool head is a person of understanding." The wise person doesn't say everything they think. Just because it passes through your brain doesn't mean it has to come out of your mouth. Instead, the wise person bites their tongue until they have thoroughly thought through the right thing to say. Okay, now for guys, I'm telling you, especially young guys, this is good marriage counseling. Don't say it till you've thought it through. Okay, it'll give you trouble if you do. I'm just telling you, okay, just up front. The fool cannot keep their mouth shut. If it runs through their brain, it must come out their mouth. If they get angry or they get offended, they have to let everyone know it right away. The fool wears their feelings on their sleeve. Not only do they arrogantly believe that they are right about everything, but they instantly take action based upon that arrogance. Maybe you've watched videos, cop videos of people being arrested. They may have the right to remain silent, but I find often they do not have the ability to remain silent. They think they're going to argue and fight their way out of trouble in the middle of being arrested. It doesn't work. I have never seen it work. See, that person is a fool. They can't keep their mouth shut. They can't control themselves. The wise person keeps their mouth shut, so the police won't have any extra evidence to use against them. Of course, wise people aren't usually the ones getting arrested, so that's not who you get to watch in the videos. Okay, doesn't work that way. Maybe we've seen an example of this just recently in the news. Maybe some of you saw this. There was a woman who didn't catch her home run at a Phillies game, But she believed she was entitled to the ball because the seat she purchased was closest to where it landed in the stadium. And so the gentleman who did actually get to it first had taken it over and given it to his son, and she boldly went over to them and demanded they give it to her. It was hers by rights for her purchasing her seat. And the father, not wanting to have a confrontation with this woman who was getting more and more and more aggressive, did give it to her. It's interesting, the crowd booed her for her bad behavior. She just flipped them off. Why? Because she's a fool. She believes herself to be right, and she arrogantly and quickly acted upon that belief. Now, my understanding, the reports, if you're concerned about the little boy, the Phillies and the Marlins actually took action, made sure the little boy got plenty of good things. It turned out it was his birthday. He got lots of loot, including the bat that hit the home run, autographed. They took care of him. And what I found interesting, I saw an article this morning of a news media outlet claiming to have gone to the woman's house and interviewed her. The story is that since then she's lost her job because of her behavior, worked in the school system. Yeah, can you imagine? And, is being held up to national ridicule, and yet she still insists she's right. She had more right to that ball than the child because she needed it for her collection, according to the article. I think that kind of fits in with what we just read. See, those people walk around in our society. And maybe this is why we are told, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 3, a sensible person sees danger and takes cover, but the inexperienced keep going and are punished. The fool cannot see the danger that's coming. They don't see it. That's why they keep getting in trouble. They don't see it. The consequences for their actions, they don't understand what's going to happen. Their foolishness has blinded them from being able to see the outcome, any outcome, other than the one they have made up in their own mind. And they believe themselves. That's why they're a fool. Maybe this is why we're warned, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 12, better for a person to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool in his foolishness. See, a fool, when they're caught up in their foolishness, they will wreak havoc on anyone and everyone around them. The best thing to do is get away from them. The biblical advice with fools is avoid them. Just avoid them. They are dangerous. So avoid them when they are engaged in their foolishness. Now, if allowed to run amok, I will tell you, fools will wreak havoc on your society. Maybe we've seen this. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 8 says, mockers inflame a city, but the wise turn away anger. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 3. Honor belongs to the person who ends a dispute, but any fool can get himself into a quarrel. Proverbs 27, verse 3. A stone is heavy and sand a burden, but aggravation from a fool outweighs them both. If fools are running around displaying their foolishness, venting their anger, it will inflame your community, your society, with rage and fighting. It'll cause trouble. There are few burdens in this world so heavy as the aggravation a fool can cause. If your society has people running around causing trouble, no matter what you show them, they are incapable of learning, incapable of changing their mind. Instead, they just want to argue and they want to demand their way. And I'm going to tell you, your society has a foolishness problem. And it will be a heavy burden and a disruption to your society. As these characteristics of a fool weren't enough, there is more. The fool enjoys their foolishness. They enjoy their foolishness. It's what brings joy to their heart. Proverbs 15:14 says, a discerning mind seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. Proverbs 15:21, foolishness brings joy to the one without sense, but a person with understanding walks a straight path. Proverbs 17:16, why does a fool have money in his hand with no intention of buying wisdom? See, the fool is a fool because they desire foolishness. Just like we saw with the wise person becomes wise because they desire learning and understanding. Solomon told his sons, make that your goal, make that your treasure. You're out there looking for understanding, for wisdom, for learning. Make it a passion in your heart. Well, the fool is the opposite. The fool delights in their foolishness. It's what makes them happy. Even when they have the means of and the opportunity to gain wisdom, and wisdom is available to everyone, they don't want it. They may have their money in their hand, but they're not going to buy wisdom with it. They're going to waste it on foolishness. The wise person treasures wisdom, but the fool treasures foolishness. Maybe this is why we're warned, Proverbs 14:7, stay away from a foolish person. You will gain no knowledge from his speech. You know, you will not gain knowledge by talking to a fool. Won't help you. They can't give you what they don't have. So stay away from them. Avoid them. Don't waste your time. Don't cast your pearls before swine, as Jesus put it. Along that same line of thought, even when a fool possesses knowledge, they can't use it properly. Can a fool know something that's true? Well, yeah, they can, but they don't know how to use it. See, a little knowledge in the hands of a fool can even become a dangerous thing. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 7, we read, a proverb in the mouth of a fool is like lame legs that hang limp. Proverbs 26:9, a proverb in the mouth of a fool is like a stick with thorns brandished by the hand of a drunkard. See, even when a fool gains some knowledge, it's useless at best and a weapon in their hands at worst, because their heart is bent on foolishness. So they don't know how to properly use any knowledge that they do get. They can't put it to its rightful purpose. The same goes for honor and respect. Proverbs chapter 26:1, like snow in the summer and rain at the harvest, honor is inappropriate for a fool. Proverbs 26:8, giving honor to a fool is like binding a stone in a sling. Now, slings were made for throwing stones, like a slingshot. If you bind the stone in the sling, it cannot be thrown. That's what honor's like with a fool. It's worthless. It becomes worthless for its intended purpose, but it still can be dangerous to anyone near enough to hit when you're swinging it. That's the way fools are. They are worthless for their intended purpose, but they can be very dangerous to anyone who's near them, anyone near enough to be affected by their foolish behavior. So avoid them. For this reason, giving honor to a fool is inappropriate as snow is in June in Phoenix. Okay? The two just don't go together. As a society, we should take note of this. We should show honor to those who are honorable. We should hold up those who have done great deeds of valor, those who have served the community, those who have protected the community. It is inappropriate for a society to bestow honors and awards on people for their foolishness. It will only waste your resources at best, and it will likely lead to harming your society at worst. When you see our public officials recognizing fools for their foolishness, it's doing damage to our society. Finally, we're told this: wisdom is the focus of the perceptive, but a fool's eyes roam to the ends of the earth. The perceptive person is the one with understanding. They are focused on wisdom. They are focused on learning. They want to gain more understanding. They're focused on learning whatever is necessary to accomplish the task at hand. You give them something to do, they will endeavor themselves, they will work to learn how to do it right. That's the perceptive person, whatever task it is that they may have. The fool, on the other hand, never has their mind on what they're doing. Their eyes are always filled with discontent. They are always looking around everywhere, their eyes looking to the ends of the earth, rather than paying attention to what they should be focusing on. I don't know if you ever taught school, but I'll tell you what, a classroom of kids on a warm afternoon, Their eyes are everywhere, not focusing on their work. That'd be kind of a picture. This is why we're told, when it comes to the fool, not to trust them with their work. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 6 says, "The one who sends a message by a fool's hand cuts off his own feet and drinks violence." Proverbs 26:10, "The one who hires a fool or who hires those passing by is like an archer who wounds everyone indiscriminately." See, if you run into one of these people that we've been reading about in the Proverbs, the fool, then you don't want them doing things for you. You don't want to depend on them. You certainly don't want them working for you if you're in a position to hire people. Sending a message by a fool is a guaranteed way for the person you're communicating with to get the wrong message. It's a fool's errand to send a message by a fool, and it will work to your harm. Don't trust a fool to deliver your message. To hire a fool, or even just hire people at random as they pass by, that people that could easily turn out to be a fool, and there are many of them in the world, is like an archer that just shoots randomly without aiming. As a result, he could wound many people indiscriminately. You never know what you're going to get. You never know who he's going to hit. Hiring the fool works that way. Their behavior is unpredictable. They're not steady. You don't know when they'll be watching their work and when their eyes will be roaming. Actually, I don't know if you've thought about it, but I really think this is why so many businesses have such trouble with consistency in their service and their production. They have fools working for them. If you don't believe that, go to a customer service counter somewhere. Okay, you'll find out most places. The work of a fool is very hit or miss. They won't be consistent. And so that's when you know you have fools working, when the work is inconsistent. And in that, we're crossing a little bit over into business sense. It's kind of a different set of Proverbs. But when it comes to fools, you don't want to hire them. Fools often complain about how society discriminates against them. You'll hear this, I can't find a job. Nobody will hire me because of my personal choices. Like a blue mohawk or head to toe body piercings or whatever else, don't give them a job walking through a metal detector. That's, bad plan right there. Or running an MRI. Okay, don't want that. But that's because of their own choices, their own foolishness, that no wise person wants to hire them. They don't want them working for them. Why? Because they know they're a fool. Who wants to hire them? Proverbs also tells us this, that there are consequences for the people who are a fool. This is Proverbs 14:18. The inexperienced inherit foolishness, but the sensible are crowned with knowledge. Proverbs 11:29. The one who brings ruin on his household will inherit the wind, and a fool will be a slave to someone whose heart is wise. The foolish person will ruin their future. You bank on it. They will ruin their future. All that lies ahead of the fool is more foolishness. They'll just continue on the path they're on. Their future will be empty. It'll be like they'll always wind up working for someone else, working for someone that's wiser than they are when they can find a job. Sometimes you see fools in high places. Now, that does happen. Sometimes they get to the top, but I'm going to tell you, they usually won't last long. Okay, it's a rough thing at the top. Fools don't last long. They don't rule for long. Eventually, their foolishness will make them servants to someone who has more sense. But if they are too foolish, people with sense won't want them. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 10, we read this. It says, a sly wink of the eye causes grief, and foolish lips will be destroyed. Proverbs 26:3, a whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the back of fools. The fool brings grief and destruction and judgment on themselves and upon anyone that's too close to them. It's dangerous to be near them. They don't see it coming. They're blinded to it. And God, in His grace, may give them time to change. He is patient. He is giving them time to repent of their foolishness. But if they won't change their ways and repent, the destiny of every fool is eventually to be punished. Eventually, their foolishness will get them in trouble. Eventually, it will bite them. It is their destiny, if they will not change, to be punished and eventually wind up destroyed. There's a lot of outraged fools running around in our society. It's something society has. But I can tell you how this will end. It will eventually bring judgment and destruction. That's what happens to fools. That's what the Bible says. Now, we don't want to be one of them. Okay, I've given you a recipe how to make a fool. My advice is don't use this recipe. Okay? Do not try this at home. This is not what you want. So how do we avoid such a fate? How do we not allow ourselves to be caught up into this? Well, let me give you 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 things this morning that will help you avoid such a fate as the fool. First one is humble yourself and become teachable. Humble yourself and become teachable. The primary foundation of making a fool is pride and being unteachable. So the first line of defense in making sure you're not a fool is humility and teachability. You be the opposite. If you are humbly willing to learn, then you likely will not make too much of a fool of yourself. And even if you do, now we probably all could look back on our life and said, oh, I said something stupid, I did something stupid. I mean, we've all been there. But even if you do have that moment of foolishness, if you are teachable and humble, you can learn from the experience so you don't repeat it. What traps the fool in their foolishness is their pride and their unteachability, so they keep repeating the mistake. They do the same thing over and over. Now, this is an important dynamic, and unfortunately, I think we seem to relegate these concepts of humility and the concept of willingness to learn to second-rate issues, okay? These are not things we usually focus on as the primary issues in the Christian life. But I'm going to tell you, they are primary issues. They are not secondary issues. The primary issue, if you want to be a disciple who's made like Christ, you need to be like him. Well, if you're a disciple, you're a student. Well, how can you be a student if you're not teachable? How can I be a disciple of Jesus if I won't learn? Secondly, there's no one in the world, you read Philippians chapter 2, there's no one ever who has been more humble than Christ. You want to be like Jesus, you got to learn humility. It's a necessity, not an extra. And so, the first thing you want to do, if you want to avoid foolishness, avoid that in your life, humble yourself and become teachable. Second thing, think before you speak or act. Develop self-control. Develop self-control. A major weakness of the fool is hastily acting upon their foolish thoughts and feelings without taking the time to think them through. They are driven by emotional impulses. They cannot control themselves. So if you don't want to play the fool, learn self-control. Learn self-control. It'll keep you out of a lot of trouble. Develop the ability to think and feel without taking immediate action or without immediately opening your mouth. It's not wrong to think things, but think it through before you speak. Not wrong to feel things, but think it through before you act. The more you think through what you're doing before you take action, the less likely you are to do or say foolish things. Charles Spurgeon put it this way. He said, do nothing when you are out of temper, and then you will have less to undo. It's truth to that. I mean, how many times have we said something in anger and then had to go back and apologize? Well, you know what? You'll save yourself the apology if you don't say it in the first place. Just keep your mouth shut. See, the fool speaks. The wise person waits. They think it through. They're patient enough not to act or to speak without thinking through the consequences, and so they avoid foolishness. And so we should develop that self-control to think before we act, which you might also remember, self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. One of the fruits of the Spirit. It's one of the qualities that we should see increasing in the life of every Spirit-filled Christian. We should be continually developing more and more self-control. Well, if you develop that self-control, you will not be a fool. It'll save you all that grief, that heartache, that trouble. Third thing is this: you need to have a changed heart. You want to avoid being a fool, you need to have a changed heart. You need to come to Jesus and ask him to change your heart so you won't love foolishness. See, the fool loves foolishness, but you want Jesus to change your heart so you will cast foolishness out of your desires, and instead you will love godliness. You will love wisdom. You will love good things. The fool is trapped in their foolishness because it's what their heart desires. They want it. To prevent this requires more than just an outward change in behaviors. You can kind of head it off at the pass. I mean, you can keep your mouth shut, but if your heart's still thinking foolish things, you're still going to have a struggle. Head it off at the pass. Come to Jesus, let him change your heart. Then you won't have the foolish things coming out of your mouth. You can keep from becoming a fool by making sure your heart desires the things that are godly, that are good, that are wise, rather than the things that are foolish. And the way to do that, the way to affect heart change, is you surrender your heart to Jesus. You come to him with all the faults you may have, whatever they are, whatever foolishness is in your heart, you bring it to Jesus so he can make your heart like his. That's the goal. We want to become like him. We want to learn from his wisdom. Well, we come to him and he will change us from the inside out. He changes our heart. So we find that what we need to do is surrender ourselves to God so that we can become conformed to the image of Jesus, his Son, and then we will continually become more and more wise, like Jesus, until the day we're completely made like him. You know, I got good news. We get to heaven, there won't be any foolishness. There'll be fun, there'll be joy unlimited, but there won't be foolishness. There'll only be godliness, wisdom, joyful things, things that really benefit and bring blessing. And so you get that by coming to Jesus. Thank you for watching this video. If you live in the greater Phoenix area, we would love to have you come and worship with us in person any Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. The Meadows Baptist Church is located at 3701 West Beardsley Road. That's the side road of the 101 just west of 35th Avenue. We would love to have you pop by as we celebrate Jesus together.